for eye preserving significantly improved during the recent years, and as a consequence, more children are being treated without histopathological exam confirmation. Therefore, imaging is very important in low staging, grouping and staging. Now, the modalities for imaging retinoblastoma, they are mainly ultrasonography, ocular ultrasonography, CT scan, and MRI. The mainstay for imaging of head and neck tumors in children. And when it comes to imaging modalities in retinoblastoma, the ultrasonography and MRI are the preferred modalities. The other modalities which are available to us are fundus pictures, the retinal angiography, optical coherence tomography, CT scan, and PET scan. Now, the PET scan, it is an important modality for cancer imaging in general, but its value in retinoblastoma imaging is currently limited. So, coming to the RETCAM image, the retinal images, it is the main purpose of this is documentation or to monitor an inactive lesion. But we must remember that it's not a substitute for EUA. Indirect ophthalmoscopy has been considered the gold standard for diagnosing retinoblastoma when the media clarity is present. This is performed by the ophthalmologist under GA or sedation. In almost all cases of classic retinoblastomas, we get intratumoral calcifications which are detected by ultrasonography, providing high confidence rate regarding diagnosis. Tumor parameters which are studied on ultrasonography, they are laterality, number, location, size of the tumors, and tumor seeding to the vitreous, subretinal space or anterior segment. As we can see over here, there is the calcification, it leaves a acoustic shadowing behind, and it's important for grouping the retinoblastoma and to guide the therapeutic decisions. Ocular ultrasonography, this is the initial diagnostic method of choice in retinoblastoma. On B scan, we'll see irregular mass, more echogenic than the vitreous body with fine calcifications. I've just shown you the acoustic shadowing. On A scan, we get high internal reflectivity, which is suggestive of calcification. Calcification is seen at 80%. It's the key to differentiating retinoblastoma from other mass lesions in a young child. It detects calcifications in 92 to 95% cases where it is present, and tumor height, diameter, they are the measurements which are used for choice of treatment. Ultrasonography would also tell us about the growth pattern by seeing the retinal detachment. If it's an endophytic type of tumor, the tumor grows into the vitreous body, and frequently small clusters of tumor are seen. And exophytic, the tumor grows in the subretinal space. Retinal detachment with subretinal exudate and seeding would be seen. And it can also pick up vitreous seeds, breach in the sclera, optic nerve thickening. As we can see over here, we can see there's a breach in the sclera over here. Monitoring of the size of the tumor while on chemotherapy. Now, color Doppler, this helps in differentiating from PHPV, and central vessels exhibiting arterial flow is compatible with a prominent persistent hyaloid vascular structure. Now, that too combined with a lack of mass lesion and negative calcification, it is almost pathognomonic of a PHPV. Coming to the optical coherence tomography, there's a study in Bijo this last year. They've done a study with a handheld high-resolution spectral domain optical coherence tomography in retinoblastoma, and for this we need media clarity is required. So if a patient media is opaque, then this cannot be done. And what we see is a sudden transition from a normal retina to a elevated lesion, and behind that we cannot see the rest of the details because of the presence of calcification. And very rarely OCT can also pick up cavities within the tumor and even in the retina. Angiography, retinal fluorescent angiography, it helps to confirm the diagnosis of retinoblastoma, but we must remember that it is not usually performed. That is because there are availability of other non-invasive techniques are there to diagnose retinoblastoma. False positive results can occur in these cases following either involving other similar pathologies. Now here we can see that this is a raised nodular lesion, and here we can see that the arterial phase, it shows a frame showing a rapid filling of the feeding retinal arteries and capillary network within the region. And here we can see in the laminar venous phase, there's a more complete filling of the tumor vasculature, and in the late phase there's intense staining of the entire tumor. MRI and CT scan. MRI, I'll be talking first about the MRI. MRI is imaging of choice in diagnosis and staging of retinoblastoma to delineate deeper lesions. Now, it's useful to assess intraocular extent, extraocular, intracranial, and leptomeningeal spread, imaging of the skull base and CNS. It has specific role in the CNS. It is not as specific for diagnosing retinoblastoma as CT scan because of the MRI's insensitivity for detecting calcium. However, when put together with ophthalmoscopy and ultrasonography, this achieves similar results. The prognostic value of MRI is involvement of post-laminar optic nerve, involvement of ocular codes, that is choroid and sclera, and vitreous seeds. Now, MRI showing retinoblastoma, it shows a heterogeneously enhancing soft tissue mass, and we can see that it is hyper intense to vitreous on T1 weighted images, and it is hypointense to vitreous on T2 weighted images. You can see over here. The other image, it shows the axial CT, axial MRI, T2 weighted image, and this is going through the mid-globe level, and we see a normal cornea and the lens on the other side, whereas in this, on the right side, we see a large mass in the right globe. MRI, here we can see this is the endophytic type where the tumor is growing towards the vitreous, and an exophytic type where there is exudative retinal detachment, and there's a mass lesion which is heterogeneous. Now this is how in a Coats disease this would not be present. Calcification would not be seen. There would be just RD. Hyperintense lesion on a T1 weighted image in the anterior portion would tells us about the neovascularization, and as we know, involvement of the anterior segment is associated with poor prognosis. Choroidal invasion, it has a specificity of 68%. There is a nice, beautiful article by Dr. Bhavna which has been published in Ophthalmology 2012, and that gives us the specificity of 68%. Choroidal invasion is associated with higher mortality rate. Slight choroidal invasion is associated with mortality rate of 24%, and significant choroidal invasion increases the risk to 65%. Transscleral spread, it has a specificity of 100% when correlating with histopathology. As compared to CT scan, here the orbital involvement, we see that the orbital involvement is fewer than in 10%, and it's associated with a higher mortality risk. Optic nerve imaging, it has a correlation with histopathology. We can see over here, it has a specificity of 72%, and here we can see this tumor, any optic nerve thickening and enhancement are indicators of optic nerve invasion as seen over here. Now optic nerve invasion, the present mortality is less than 10%. Invasion up to lamina cribrosa, mortality rises to 15%, and post-lamina cribrosa, mortality rises to 44%. And like CT scanning, MRI has a role in the detection of extraocular tumor spread, especially extension into the optic canal. Now, MRI would also pick up lesions, trilateral retinoblastoma, that is in the pineal region, any tumor mass in the pineal region, as well as the suprasellar mass, which is also called in a bilateral retinoblastoma with lesion in the pineal, in the pituitary fossa, as well as in the suprasellar, would be called a quadrilateral retinoblastoma. And as we know, that trilateral retinoblastoma, it represents tumor in the pineal region in addition to bilateral retinoblastoma, which is present in about 1.5 to 5% of patients with retinoblastoma. Now, MRI is also sensitive to pick up the lesions, spread metastasis of the lesion to the leptomeningeal, as we can see over here. Now, CT scan is generally preferred in older children, but and it is avoided in children less than 2 years. As we know, the risk of second cancers are there in this if we expose them to radiation. Now, intracranial metastatic lesions have been reported in virtually all patients dying of retinoblastoma, and over 50% of distant organ metastasis. So here, the CT scan is showing a large intracranial extension, and here is metastasis to the regional lymph node. A patient having second cancer and reporting to the orthopedic surgeon, and with a lesion in the limbs, they would prefer an X-ray. That will be the initial diagnostic modality for the orthopedician. So here we can see a second cancer, that is osteogenic sarcoma involving the limb. So coming to the summary and conclusions, ultrasonography and MRI are preferred modalities in investigating, differentiating, staging and monitoring the disease in various courses of the grouping and staging of the disease. CT scan is avoided in children to prevent radiation exposure. Role of angiography is to confirm the diagnosis of retinoblastoma. We must remember, not usually performed. The role of OCT is useful in monitoring lesions for monitoring reasons for visual loss following treatment of retinoblastoma. And a handheld spectral domain OCT is useful for diagnosing of new lesions, monitoring the response to laser therapy, and the identification of edge recurrences. Thank you.